Hello everyone, this is Scott in a Saturday service video. As you can see, I am not in my regular environs. In fact, I am traveling. So I spent the night in a hotel and I'm on my way to the desert as this is that time of the year which I initiated into my tradition as a high priest, and I am returning to the land where I did that, or as close to it as I can. I don't want to drive too far out, but to be back in that, to sort of reconnect with those energies while I'm still in that Taurus vibe, because that's when it happened for me. This week was interesting for me, and I had a lot to digest. And I like to say that I get a lot of my information from my experiences. I think that this is true for everyone because we're experiential beings. We draw from our past and our hopes and fears about the future to live in the present. And I think that this is true for a lot of us. My practice, though, is really to try to be present, to be informed by the past so that I can make wise choices about the present and my future rather than letting them be dictated by whatever sort of fears or, whatever might be going on inside me. I try to be more conscious and clear about that. I just finished writing in my journal. This is my temporary journal as I ran out for a hot minute. And I usually keep my big journals in stock. But this month, I found that I hadn't done that. So I needed to order a new one, and that shipped. But in the interim, I needed something to write in. So I was reflecting a lot today on the week, and there were some things that I just sort of wanted to spin out into the world from some of the conversations that I had. One of them was the things that we want always, they don't always happen in the timeline that we'd like. And there are many reasons for that. Some of them are just circumstances. Some of them are, just the way things are, like what we're able to do, what we're able to accomplish, what we have access to can prevent a lot of the things that we'd like to see happen in the world. But I think that while that can be true for some of us, I think that there are times when this is especially true. There's a kind of highlight around it for me. When I see a highlight in my life, that means I'm seeing a pattern of it repeat for itself. So I'm in the spaciousness that I've created for myself in the last couple of weeks, which has definitely moved into this week. I was really looking at the patterns of what I really desire to see happen in the world and when it's actually going to occur. And I had to kind of be realistic with myself to understand that, especially for some of the bigger projects, that these things take time and it's not always on our timetable, right? The demands that everything sort of fall into line with when we'd like them to happen are oftentimes unrealistic when it comes to, the rest of the life around us, and want to be less in the place of demand myself and more in the place of understanding the course of things. Even if I've done magic, and I'm a person that does practice magic as much as I do practice, surrendering, I try to balance both of those things in myself so that I can not be so full of ego that I think everything must go my way and that I'm the most important thing in the universe, and also not so deep into surrender and letting go that I've forgotten myself completely. I try to find a little balance in those things. So here's some of the patterns that I noticed this week. The desire for things to happen and the timing in which they will. We have ideas that come out of the abstract, that come out of the light of ourselves, and they feel present. We may do magic and things to make them happen, but when we do that, we release them to the material. And when we release it to the material, it enters the cycles of the sun, the moon, the stars, and nature. That means, ideally, it's going to flow and manifest and materialize within those tides of things. When we try to speed it up, when we try to force it once we've sort of let the idea go into the universe. We've said to in our moon circles or in our prayers or whatever we're doing that we'd like for this to happen. And then we start to sort of chase it down and say faster, faster, faster. We sort of tear the wings on it. I sort of imagine them sometimes as flying creatures I've let loose, like this idea, this thing I'd like to manifest in the world. I've let it out there and it's flying. It's flying into the material. And by me chasing it down, I'm sort of tearing at the wings of it as it goes. And that's not so good. That doesn't really help it manifest very much. I also had a conversation. So patterns and timing, I think, is one of the things. And the second thing that I'd like to talk about is magic, like magic, and also magic, which is like the magic that we do. And there's a difference between the two things. Because I had a really great conversation this week with someone talking about charlatans and the real thing, and how do you distinguish the difference between those two things. And that's sometimes hard to discern, because unless you've had an authentic experience that you can really define as magical, that filled you with wonder and love and awe, or just sort of knocked your socks off or blew the hat off you, and you were like, whoa, that was magic, you can't really see what it is, because it's something that is definitely immaterial, even though it may manifest in some physical way. And if one hasn't seen that, then they can't really see it until they experience it. And then they go, oh, this is what you're talking about with magic. And I can give you a lot of examples on that. But I think essentially that's the thing to remember, is that the magic is there, but we don't necessarily see it until we do. And that's true of everybody. So we can't demand that people see the wonder. We can't demand that people see the love. We can't demand that people see the magic, because they won't. They're only going to see the demand, and they're probably going to have resistance to that. They're probably going to be turned off about that, or they're going to get pissed off about it, right? So they're never going to see what we're talking about when we're talking about these wonderful things, that experiences that we may have. But my one friend was saying, how like for you, how do you sort of distinguish these things? This talk may go a little bit longer. And for me in magic, and I think that's, like I'm a person who practices magic. I'm a minister in a magical tradition. Even though this is a personal offering, I reference that experience, that we have methods that we use. I have methods that I use in my practices that sort of take me to the precipice, so to speak, of what is known and the unknown, the beautiful unknown, where the magic really happens. This kind of liminal space where in crosses what I've called in from this magical world. We're witches in the way that I frame witches. One of the ways is that we're liminal beings. We stand between worlds. You might have heard us called hedge crossers, or various ways. But I mean, we ideally, I think, or in my perspective of things, we're the ones that create good boundaries, hopefully, and know how to cross them, like in sacred ways, so that we can call in greater magic to ourselves, and we make friends with spirits and allies along the way to make that happen. But there is the part there that in magic, the sleight of hand, the mentalism and charisma that you might see in some organizations, when you're outside of it and you think, oh, that really goes nowhere, but everyone's really in a frenzy about it. That is all the mechanics of magic without the spirit being involved in it. So it builds up a charge based on enthusiasm and charisma and, a lot of the components that really take us to the edge of that precipice, but it doesn't really go anywhere. It stays within the confines of whoever that thought leader, a guru, or whoever that person is, and they stay there. And what does that feed, right? That may feed the community in certain ways, and I'm not saying that that's completely like it's totally horrible, because in function, if that existed in a balanced way, that might feed a community very well. But oftentimes it's used to feed the thought leader or feed the charisma, the bank accounts, of those thought leaders. And it really doesn't connect them to God, and I don't mean God in a Christian sense. I just mean in the overall sense of something greater. It doesn't really connect them to that. It may connect them to each other, but oftentimes more than not, we see this play out plenty of times. It connects them to an individual and their philosophy of things. And I think with magic, what we have, we're inviting something that's truly transformative, that alchemizes us, that changes us. So, if a thought leader, right, like that's just anybody who's really involved in a program of things that's advertised or intended to take us into more connection to the universe or nature or whatever direction it's taking you. I think it distinguishes, that person from a true spiritual person, who maybe like truly a shamanic person, truly a priest, truly, in service to their gods, truly in service to the universe, whatever that is. Not to define that for anybody, but say, if it really is that person, they will have these methods, and when they do them, when you reach that precipice, that container is no longer closed. It opens you and allows for you to come out of that container and connect to the divine, whatever that means for you, connect to the greater, and return to that container. And then the method is more than just a bunch of claptrap and charisma. It is, it is a daze. It is a pathway that leads you in and out of these sorts of things. And there's lots I can say about how that is maintained and made well or turned poisonous, but we're not talking about that at this time in this week. But it's to say, how do I distinguish these things and this experience and your magical experience and your teachers and your experiences of your past and then going forward in the future? My advice is that the getting involved in these sorts of things, is it focused on the method or is it focused on an individual? Does the method actually help you connect to you, and does it help you connect to the divine, whatever that is? I think whatever that is, if it's not harming anybody, good for you, right? Or does it connect you to an individual, and is that connection to that individual connecting to the divine? Guru relationships are good if they're healthy, or is it about the individual? And you will notice the difference, because you will have an aha, or should have an aha, of that sort of divine connection through the community, through the methods, whatever it is, that frees you of the binds, of the rules of this engagement for whatever moment or time that is, to truly connect you to something. And if it doesn't, if it's just recycling the same information over and over again and just ultimately focused on that one individual, or just overly focused, like it becomes dogmatic on rules and all these sorts of things, it's dour, it doesn't take you anywhere. It doesn't connect you to the ecstatic, right? Because the universe is ecstatic and electric and alive and woo, there's all kinds of good things there. If it doesn't connect you to that, then maybe consider that it's not truly a magical experience, that it's a charismatic experience, that it's a thought form experience, that it's, what is it really good for, right? To just sort of think about that. I don't know why that was such a conversation this week, but it was. I know individually for certain folks that it had meaning for them in particular, but I noticed that I had the conversation more than once. And I thought, this is a pattern that's repeating in my world. It's like your 111 or 222 or 333 on your clock, right? It was a repeating pattern, and I had to say to myself, why is this repeating? Why is this repeating? What does it mean for me, right? It's again patterns, timing, right? Materialism, these things that we want. To sort of think about those. I did draw cards. This week I'm using the B Tarot. This is by Kristoffer Hughes and Nadia Turner. This deck is freaking amazing. The book is full of not only great writing by Kristoffer, but full-size images of the cards. It is well written, and it's absolutely gorgeous, and I've gotten a lot out of it. I feel like when I use this deck, I'm really touching into. I know Kristoffer is a druid, but it really touches witchcraft for me because it really touches the life, the bees, the flowers, the figures really touch the life, right, and the sweetness and the sting, of life. And then it also has those other elements of transformation inside there. So it really touches magic for me. It's very witchy. I like the deck a lot. I pulled a couple of cards for that today. As sort of thoughts for the week, things to think about or contemplate as we do. So in the first one that I pulled from that I want to talk about is the Ace of Wands. And so that's this card right here. And this really, when we see aces, this really has a lot to do with possibilities, potentials. These are the pure elemental power that really hasn't found form yet. Kristoffer says that this has to do with progression and decision and possibility. And I agree with that. I really like that idea. And it says, if we're faced with options, if we're full, no, I want to rename that. I want to re-say that. You're full of potential and possibility. There's plenty of passion for you there. There's ideas, there's energy waiting for your ideas and what you really want to go forward with and do. And I think it's pictured in this card. This tree, which has been cut, is still full of flowers, and the bees are gathering that and they're filling their hives with it. So this can have a lot to do of understanding that what do you need to do and taking your next steps in consideration, or are you lacking motivation, that sort of thing. When I see this in relationship to the patterns this week, that means what is the next step that really need to do? I needed to take this trip. I needed to recenter myself. I needed to handle these things, right? This was the next step on that long progression of what needs to manifest. And now that I'm here and I've done my meditation, my work, I can see why. That's important. Where I felt disheartened about certain things, I really now have clarity, right? And getting away can really do that for you. So it's an ask this week. What you'd like to do and what you'd like to see in the world. Are you really seeing and respecting the pattern of how that is going to manifest out? Are you being too demanding about that? And are the methods that you're using really taking you there, or are they just repeating a pattern of something that's not really doing anything for you? What's the next step that you need to find courage to do for yourself in order to understand that? And I also pulled a second card this week. I love the court cards. I think when I see court cards, a lot of people get confused by them, and they are aspects of personality and aspects of yourself. So they really speak to our experiences and development as people. I love that this is a bee in the thistle. This really has to do about, Kristoffer writes, it being productive, being focused, and being ambitious. When I think of the princes, these cards, right? When I think of these, I think this would be, I'm forgetting my words right now, but this is kind of the apprentice in the card. Some people will say that these have a lot to do with the, kids or young personalities. It's the idea that these represent, sorry, I take that back. I messed that up. These represent the knights. The princes represent the knights. So these represent our attitude as that we carry out to the world. These represent action. These represent direction, that we're going to move ourselves and what we're going to do. And this really speaks a lot to the practical aspects of what needs to be done. We need to motivate on the details, right? And these knight cards, or these princes card, remind us to be productive, focused, and ambitious, to sort of follow that information as we need to go and find it, to make it happen in the world. So when we see this, this is we need to focus on the practical, we need to focus on being mindful, we might need to be a little bit more gentle in our encouragement in the directions that we'd like to see. I'm sort of reading from the book here, so you get the general idea by the author. And this can also be that when we see that indecisiveness or we see that demand, right? Like, because it's that knight card. The knights are those active principles out in the world. When we think about those qualities, I just to sort of paint the bigger picture here. What are you trying to accomplish? Tapping into what we feel we'd like to see in the world to make it happen. There's lots of things going on a bigger scale, but what's happening for you personally? To reference back to the last couple of weeks, what are you doing for you, right? Like refocus on yourself for a moment. Those have been big messages, creating space for yourself, like care for self. And now really deciding what it is that's next, right? We're coming up on a new moon. This would be a great time to sort of like solidify those things. Will be a new moon. Great for manifesting. I think this particular new moon this is not an astrology thing here, but definitely that is part of the Astra. So to mention it, putting those things in order for that new moon could be a really great exercise about what are the next steps that you can help to materialize, maybe within a cycle of the moon, right? To understand that you might need a little bit more gentleness with it in your action, but to sort of land on what you'd like to see materialize. I think that would be a good message for the week. Something, again, these are meant to be contemplative, right? Not necessarily forecasts. There's lots of forecasts out there. If you're looking at a forecast, how do you take this contemplative moment and look at that astrology forecast or tarot forecast or whatever it is that you're looking at with that in mind? And that's my message for the week, right? Everything has timing. Lean into your practice. Your practice is always going to inform you by helping you be aligned and clear and connected to yourself. How do you do that? Are the methods that you're using, are they bringing you to the place where you can sort of really connect to the universe, whatever that means for you? Are they connecting you to, and I would look at this like any movement or moment that you're having right now that you're really, really involved in, who is it serving? And if it is really focused or centered around someone, what are they serving? Is it really serving a purpose or a good, or is it just serving themselves as an individual? To sort of think about that. And then think about what are the next actions that you can take for yourself in the gentlest way, right? Like what's the most productive way that you can do it, but not be like, I need to be productive, right? But like, how do you productively do it? Like what's the gentle way? If you've made space for yourself, and if you haven't, babe, make space for yourself. Now's the time to do it. Moving towards, and if you're a magical person and you do those things with the moon, move towards that new moon time is a great time to plant something for yourself. Think about that bee tarot image of that thistle growing and how you can do that. So I leave you with this as a final thought for the week. We have some noise happening outside and I'm going to log off at this point. I'm Scott Smith. I'm at starandStoneLLC.com, patreon.com/Scott K. Smith. Thank you so much for watching.